Last night went really well down Pembrose Circuit. I'll just keep this real short and brief. There was the last night down there before we moved to Command and Velodrome for the winter, because it's more floodlit. It's a bit safer because there's no corners. Obviously, it's a velodrome, but it's outside, so anybody can come along. You don't have to have a road bike. You don't have to have a track bike. Rather, you just bowl around on a road bike. So it went really well last night. I ended up doing 3 hours in total yesterday. The majority of it was just at zone 2, but there was still quite a bit of accumulative fatigue. I think around about 150 TSS, with a few little efforts, but they weren't like, zone 4, zone 5, they were more like zone 3, so still kind of sub-maximum. What I wanted to talk about today, like really quickly, is like ideas behind tapering and the worries, I guess, about losing fitness. Now, a taper week, for those of you that don't know, is like where, or rather a taper period, is where you'll like gradually decrease your training and basically rest before your event, your big event. Now, it's really hard to do this during the season for me, because obviously you're bouncing from race to race, and you can have 3 or 4 A races as opposed to just one. Say people are training for the Ironman World Championships or whatever. It's like one target event. So I pulled up a few articles that I'd like to pinch a few things off of that I feel you might get a lot of value of. I mean, this isn't my own. Well, I'll throw in a bit of my own experience as well. Training Peaks got a really good article, choosing the best taper for your next triathlon, but we'll miss out the triathlon bit. But basically, they talk about three different tapers. There's the linear taper, which is the straightforward taper, which involves reducing the workload by around 20% 2 weeks out, and a further 20% in the final week in the lead up to your race or event. This one is alright, I guess, but it is basic. It's just taking chunks out of your workload, out of your week, and kind of hoping that makes a difference. Then there's the step. The step taper uses kind of like a sudden reduction in your training load about 2 weeks out, and then maintains that low load for the remainder of the taper time. And research, it says, has shown for this mode to be least effective. And I can see why. Again, it does not take into consideration other things. So like, these tapers are all very well and good, but like, what if something crops up, like you've got to work extra long hours, or so something happens where you've got to take control of stuff at home and you can't get out on the bike to like actually fulfill that taper correctly. And then there's the third and final taper is the exceptional taper, where the initial volume is gradually reduced 2 to 3 weeks and gets progressively less in the final week prior to the event. For many, this is like ideal, because that final block can be used to sharpen the body and prevent it from losing kind of any zip. Now, as far as losing fitness goes, because obviously I think we're all pretty much like, if we all love what we do enough, we all worry about losing fitness. Like, it's hard earned. Like, you've trained for months and months, and you don't want to rest and like go, oh no, I'm gonna lose all my fitness and this, that, and the next thing. It's very cliche, I guess, but there has been a lot of work into what actually happens in the body when you take like a period of time off the bike. So I actually used this when I got injured, and I had no idea how much fitness I'd lose and things. So I did a bit of digging, and I found this little article which talks about the truth about losing fitness through detraining, so that the sudden stop of training. So let's imagine a well-trained cyclist and see what happens to their body over a period of like 6 months, following complete stop of training. So on day 0, say this is your last training ride for the next 6 months. After today's ride, you store your bike away, hang up your shoes, and do nothing whatsoever. So after 3 days, they reckon you might expect your fitness has already begun to decline. However, the losses at this stage are very small. If you had been training hard prior to day 0, the 3 days of rest, your cycling fitness is now probably enhanced, believe it or not. This is partly down to the fact that your muscles have had time to fully recover, and the glycogen stores have been topped up, and the muscle fibers that have been damaged have fully repaired and things. So after a week, so let's say, for me now, for example, I've been training pretty hard up until Saturday or Friday rather of last week. So that gives me like 9 days until the hill climb. Obviously, I've trained yesterday and the day before, but we'll just keep it as 9 days. 9 days out. So this one here says on day 7. So after a week. So after a week's complete inactivity, changes begin to occur in the body that result in fitness losses. For example, after 3 days, the blood volume can be reduced by 5 to 12%. This means the decrease in the amount of blood your heart can pump, both in terms of amount of blood pumped per beat and total volume per minute, obviously. The result now is obviously your heart has to work slightly harder to maintain a given workload. There are also metabolic changes. Your muscles become less efficient at soaking glycogen, which is your body's obviously premium fuel for exercise. And this means that you obviously become less efficient on the bike. In terms of going back to the decrease in blood your heart can pump round, that also equates to the fact that you get a high heart rate. So for those of you who are taking your off season now and you're starting to come back onto the bike, your heart rate will be like 25 beats higher than normal, possibly, maybe even more. And that'll be a reason why, because you've obviously taken about 2 to 3 weeks off, which is what I'm going to move on with now and finish off on, because it does go further than that, but obviously we don't need to go any further than a month. But 2 or 3 weeks, at this point your maximum oxygen uptake, so your VO2 max, will have declined by anything from 4 to 20%. Now that's like pretty big. Part of this stems from reduced cardiac output, not helped by the fact that muscle mass in the pumping chambers of the heart can decrease by almost 20% after 3 weeks of inactivity. There's changes in your physiology and biochemistry beginning to take place. The network of muscle capillaries built up with endurance training begins to decline. And as a result, as you can guess, oxygen uptake in the muscles can decline as well. So like I said, I won't go any further than that, but in terms of calming your nerves and settling things down, when you read stuff like that and you're nervous about taking a taper, and don't forget, when you taper, you're still training, but you're just reducing the overall volume. You can reduce the volume, but you're still putting in big chunks of work at VO2 or anaerobic threshold. So you're still keeping that punch there, but without kind of all that fluff of zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 around it. So reading this kind of not only helps me in a way, because I'm really nervous about this weekend, not least because obviously I've been slightly ill over the weekend. I had to take 2 or 3 days of kind of slightly less intense training to get over it. And tomorrow I know I will be over it, but tomorrow's Thursday, so it's been a while. But at least reading this, it kind of backs up what I already know, and I know that all things considered, I've not lost any fitness. If anything, being more fresh for this weekend is better. Fresh muscles, fully topped up glycogen stores, which means I will be eating my carbohydrate, and we'll see how we go on the weekend. So that's it for me today. Sorry about the really long commentary on this. It's like 10 minutes long, but yeah, I'm sure it's worth it. It's a pretty good nugget of information. If I remember, I will link the pages that I've got this pretty in-depth information from down below, and you can take a look at it yourself. So thank you very much, guys. I will see you again.